It's right at 7, so good timing. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you. Is that a microphone?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Okay. Oh, thank you.
That's okay.
That's really high tech.
Yes. Hi, y'all. How are you doing? Good. Well, tonight we have Robert Buxton. He is a very talented pianist, and he has performed here for us before. So we are just extremely blessed to have him back. So give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Yulia, for having me back. And even with all the cheesy jokes I told last time, I'm glad. It's always great to be here. This is a wonderful place. Whenever I come in here, I just feel like I'm in a palace of culture. It has that feeling to it, and the paintings and everything. So it's a real honor to be here. I'm doing still this odd program of arrangements because today I'm going to do some vocal arrangements. I'm going to try to play a piano concerto without the orchestra, so that's sort of an arrangement too, because I fill in some orchestra parts. And I thought about why is it that I like to do this? And I think it's because I like to pretend to be something I'm not. Like I was trying to pretend to be a jazz pianist over there, back there, a minute ago. Because I've always wanted to, for example, play the violin. I mentioned last time I'm playing some violin arrangements. And my wife talked me out of it. She's a pianist too, and she said, it's just not worth it. You're busy. We have 2 small kids and 2 cats, and it's 4 kids, so it's not worth it. So plan B is just play some violin arrangements on the piano, or the voice thing. I had this thing. I was listening to some old recordings of Pavarotti or someone like that, and oh my goodness, that's the voice. That's the best instrument. In my head, I could hear it, so I'm sure I can sound like that. Well, open my mouth. And, as they say in New Jersey, forget about it. That's. Let me see this. This is on. Yeah. So, at any rate, I'm going to start with a vocal piece. It's an arrangement of a Japanese folk song. It's called "Song of the Seashore," and it's originally voice and piano. It's by a composer named Narita Tamezo. And the text, which I won't sing because I don't do that, I gave up singing, it's very nostalgic. And it's a man walking along a seashore recalling his past. And the sea is this big theme in Japan. I mean, look at Japanese art, it's all the theme of the sea. Literature, even food, it's a lot of seafood there. Because it's an island, and the sea is both source of food and transportation and beauty, but it's also a threat. And so there's that, it can be a threat. So here is the Song of the Seashore by Narita Tamezo. I'll just put this here. short things, but this is an exception. It's about 20 minutes or so. This will be like the main course of today. And this is the Piano Concerto No. 1 by Franz Liszt, without orchestra. As you can see, I didn't bring them, my orchestra. So, well, I'm going to try to play some of the orchestra parts on the piano, but of course, you know, some things are going to be missing. It's just how it is. But in the 19th century, people would do this sometimes. They would, if they didn't have access to an orchestra or whatnot, they'd just play it by themselves, you know. So it was a thing that they did. This concerto, it's very interesting because Liszt, who was born in 1811, who was a very complex personality, and I am inspired by him very much, and drawn to his life and his music. And so he started sketching this piece when he was not very old. He was like a teenager, 18 or 19 or something. But he didn't complete it until he was in his 40s or 50s, living in Weimar. So it took him a long time. Sometimes good things take time. You know, people always talk about those exceptions when someone writes a piece in an hour or something, but this took a long time for him to really work it out. And it makes sense because the form of this piece is very unusual. It's in 4 movements, but they're really not separate movements. They segue into each other. It's really like one big tone poem. A tone poem is something that Liszt sort of invented. It's a piece of music for orchestra. It could be anything. Because I think of this as a tone poem. It's a piece that's narrative, descriptive. It could be about an image or something. And this was maybe a new idea, because before you'd have a sonata or a symphony or something, and it would be 3 or 4 movements. But this is not like that. It's more like a drawn-out improvisation with moments of great fire, of course, because it's Liszt. Virtuosity was sort of his thing, but also moments of reflection, introspection, which I think some of those parts that they show the influence of his friend Chopin. For example, here in the second movement, I'm going to turn this off, I don't want it to be too loud, but I mean, that could be from the nocturnes of Chopin. Chopin influenced Liszt a lot, and in some ways Chopin sort of looked down at Liszt as a showman. A lot of people do, and I think that's not correct. In some circles in the music world, Liszt is considered sort of superficial and showy, and I think that's not the case, because you know, he had so many sides to him. Of course, you're going to hear fire and bombast, like. And just a note about that the piano technology of that time allowed for that. In Beethoven's day, the piano, do you see this metal in here? This is a cast iron frame, and it allows you to pound like that. In Beethoven's time, I mean, he eventually got a piano with a cast iron frame, but the old Viennese pianos, the strings would just break, the whole thing would collapse. And it's like Beethoven was notorious for breaking pianos. It wasn't really his fault, it was kind of the piano's fault, sorry. But when the technology came about, you could do that, and suddenly you had all these people doing that, Liszt among them. But Liszt was different because Liszt had so many other sides to him. He was also very drawn to religion, that's another. So throughout his life, he wanted to be a priest, and then it didn't happen, it almost happened, and there was this back and forth. But the piano thing, I just want to point out, there were others who were maybe more showy than Liszt. There was a guy named Dreischock, for example, who received this comment in a newspaper. They said he played so loud that if the wind was right, you could hear him in Vienna from Paris. So there was that. But Liszt is not, you know, he wasn't just doing that. And you'll see in this piece that there are moments, but then it goes to some other mood. I hear a lot of, in certain places, Liszt's Hungarian background, the gypsy music, you know, there's something like this. Because he was from Austro-Hungary, from town that's now it's now Hungary. And he considered himself Hungarian, but the funny thing is he never learned the language. So he grew up speaking German. But that whole region, you know, it's Austro-Hungary, it's a mix. But I hear that in his music as well. So what I suggest is think images or stories, because I think this piece is a narrative. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but it could be there's maybe some love in there, some war, I don't know. You name it, you decide for yourself. So at any rate, I'm stalling because this is a tricky piece. So here is the Franz Liszt Piano Concerto No. 1 without the orchestra. crazy. It's a crazy piece. I can hear my Russian piano teacher from when I was a student saying it's a very noisy concerto. So, and it is, because that's a big part of Liszt, who he was. But now I'm going to play an arrangement that he did of Franz Schubert's Ständchen Serenade, which is a famous piece. It's a lead. Well, I said I wasn't going to tell any dad jokes, but what did the aliens say when they met Schubert? You know, they said, "Take us to your leader." Lieder. It's terrible. It's wrong. Because Lied in German, Lieder means songs in German. Schubert was relatively unknown during his lifetime and shortly after. He lived from 1797 to 1828. Only 31. He died at 31, which is just, it's how, and he knew he was dying. He was very ill. And in the last year of his life, he wrote so much music. And this is one of those pieces. It's from a set of Lieder called Schwanengesang, which means swan song. So, I mean, he really knew what was going on with him. So, Schubert died in Vienna. Interestingly, he was the only of the Viennese composers at that time, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven. They were all born elsewhere, not Vienna. But Schubert was born in Vienna. But he was unknown. He was only playing for groups of friends, and which is not a bad thing to be not famous. I mean, but he was really not known. And it was Franz Liszt did a lot to popularize him after his death. Because Liszt saw in Schubert and Paganini and a bunch of others the precursor of Romanticism, of what he was going to do, right there. And Schubert it's different from Beethoven in a way. I would describe the difference as this. So Beethoven is, and this is an oversimplification. I'm working on a Beethoven concerto, and I love his music. Beethoven ultimately is a product of the Enlightenment, no matter what. Even no matter how many things he went through in his personal life with his deafness and overcoming that, but it's always a struggle, but there's always an optimistic triumph, at the end. Think of the Ninth Symphony at the very end, or the Fifth Symphony at the very end. Schubert, unfortunately, is not such an optimistic conclusion in his music. It's more of a pessimistic thing, and I think that's romantic. So you could say Schubert was the first romantic, but I don't like these games like who was the first this, the first that. I don't know. They didn't wake up one day and say, today's romantic era, yesterday was the classical. They didn't, but I think Schubert, there's a different quality. There's this melancholy to his music that maybe Beethoven wouldn't have so much, or Mozart even, or Haydn. So at any rate, this is Franz Liszt's arrangement of the song. So he adds a few things, but for Liszt, it's pretty introspective. I mean, it's not a showy piece. And he would play this a lot of his early recitals in the 1830s, and left a big impression on people, this arrangement, this piece. So here's the Schubert Ständchen, or Serenade. And first I'll have some penny burn water. It's not sparkling, is it? Okay. Because I was shaking it, I didn't want to. Very good. And this blue color is very striking. Scriabin, the Russian composer, he saw color in music. He would tell you that a certain key was a certain color, and maybe I have to bring different water bottles and play him. So, different colored water bottles. missing a part of some jewelry here. I think well, anyway, I'll just keep it.
Is it a diamond?
I don't know if it's
If it's a diamond, it's mine.
oh, it's yours. Oh, I see, okay. Sure, go afterwards, yeah. I'll only charge a small fee for now. So that's Schubert's. There was a pianist, Alfred Brendel, who said, there is a pianist, and he said that in Schubert, when you have minor keys, it represents, for him, reality. So the minor is like this. This cold reality in Schubert, not in other composers in Schubert. And major key, which it actually ended on, represents an illusion or a dream, where you have and it's strange because usually in the previous generation, the 18th century, if you had a major key, it was just a major key. It was bright and optimistic. And a minor key was dark and stormy. But Schubert manages to make the happy key major a very melancholy and sad, really, dream. So speaking of that, and I'm overgeneralizing here, but I do want to go, I'd like to jump around time periods. Sorry, I'm going to do an arrangement of a piece from an 18th century opera by a composer named Gossec, a French composer in the 1700s, so this is the Enlightenment, definitely. And Gossec, he wrote many operas mainly, not done so much today. It's interesting because in this music from the 1700s, we mostly do Mozart, Haydn, and there's a lot of composers we leave out from that time. But Gossec is, worth exploring. So this is the Gavotte. It's a famous piece from his opera Rosine, and it's a dance sequence, I call it. I don't know if that's the right term, but French opera, they always have dance sequences. It's like some people need to have Texas Pete with their barbecue. It's just the thing. I'm sorry for that analogy, but it's in French opera they always do. Can you imagine Wagner having a ballet dance sequence in his operas? Well, but the French did that to Wagner when he came to Paris. I think it was Tannhäuser or Lohengrin or something. They did it in Paris, and they said, "Well, we must add the dance, You have to, because it's just, you have to do it." So this is the Gavotte by Gossec. It's arranged by a fellow named Bass or Bass. I don't know this composer, but it's Roderich Bass. And this is a very old-fashioned arrangement. It sounds very 19th century. So let's see. This Gavotte, to me, it's very comical because it sounds like you're tiptoeing along and then you hiccup or you only lightly stub your toe on something. Let me show you what I mean. It has this like hiccup, But it's too many tangents, I'm just telling you. But it's like the art of letter writing at that time, or even those powdered wigs that they wore. That was just that time. And we're very different now. I think the French Revolution changed. This is pre-French Revolution, I think. And it's a different world. It's a world of Louis XIV, Louis XVI in this case. But it's a different mentality, very proper and very subtle. And after that, the list, different, very different. I think we're closer in the way we think and feel to Liszt than Gossec. But anyway, this is a fun, I love this piece very much, the Gavotte by Gossec. And there's many versions, violin versions, cello, everyone plays it. Schubert from the list. So, okay, looking at time, because I do have a little Southern gospel to do. So, at the end, how about, what do I do now? I forgot the word. Okay, I'm going to just jumping all around. Sorry, the time periods are not aligned. This is a very short vocal piece arrangement by Rachmaninoff. It's called Margaritsky in Russian, Daisies. He wrote it for voice originally and piano, and then he himself arranged it for piano solo. So his own arrangement. I believe he wrote this at the end of his time in Russia, before he came to this country. He left as an exile because of the Russian Revolution. And this song, to me, it's called Daisy, so it's obviously about springtime. Someone should write a piece called Pollen to go along with it. But I imagine him in outside of the town of Novgorod. He would spend his summers there with his grandmother, and would describe this as the happiest times of his life. Of course, the daisies in North Carolina, they come out now. In Russia, I don't know if they come out in June or something. But my mother's Russian, and it's funny, she was talking, very grateful not to be there now, but was talking to an old friend in Russia, Natasha, of course, the name, and she said, "Oh, springtime, how's it going?" She said, "Galina, you live in North Carolina." I went to Chapel Hill, they live there, so it's still snowing here, you know. So, but anyway, to me, it's that I have this image, this idyllic image of Rachmaninoff in his childhood, at his dacha, his nature home, his country home. That's the word, dacha. So, here it is. Rachmaninoff was known for he was very tall, shaved head, never smiled. He was known for being sort of gruff. Maybe I'll tell you a quick story about that. So true story about Rachmaninoff. That my grandfather met him in Richmond, Virginia. My dad's father, so my American side, not the Russian. He was doing a recital of Rachmaninoff. And my grandfather was an usher at this concert and was told not to let anyone through some doors, so he stood guard. Maybe I told you this story last time, but sorry if I'm telling again, but it's a good story. And so 10 minutes went by, someone actually tried to open this backstage door. So my grandfather sort of pushed, there was a little struggle there, and then wham, the door was kicked open. It was Rachmaninoff, 6.5 feet tall. And I tell people, Rachmaninoff spoke to my grandfather personally. Yeah, you know what he said? 5 words, "Get out of my way." So I have this great personal connection. There's a link there, yeah. So even though he was a little rude to my grandfather, I can forgive him. So, Daisies by Rachmaninoff. Well, while we're on the Rachmaninoff theme, I guess I'll close the classical part with this. This is a little bit longer, not as long as the list, of course. Oh, this piece drives me crazy. This is called Liebesfreude, Love's Joys, and it's by Fritz Kreisler, violin, composer, violinist, and it's arranged by Sergei Rachmaninoff. I do have a story about them, but I want to tell it after I play it. But I'll say so Liebesfreude means love's joys. I can't remember if I played the Liebeslied here before. Liebeslied is love's sorrows, and it's their companion pieces. Fritz Kreisler and Rachmaninoff, they became very good friends when they both were living in this country. Kreisler left, he was Viennese, like Schubert, but lived later, 20th century. He left when the Nazis came to power, and he was Jewish. He escaped, anti-Semitism and came to the U.S. And he and Rachmaninoff were friends, although they couldn't be more different. I mean, Kreisler, I was watching a documentary about the violin yesterday night, rewatching, and there's some video footage of Kreisler. He's this, distinguished-looking man with a mustache, always smiling, very, and the way he played violin was very warm and tender. And you see Rachmaninoff, and he's just, someone said he looked like an escaped convict. So this is, but Rachmaninoff changes this piece enormously and adds to it. The Viennese waltz has a feature. It's a little bit like a regular waltz, but it's a little bit more tipsy. So a regular waltz is 1, 2, 3, 1. But a Viennese waltz, that second beat, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. It's got a little, it's got a little something to it. So here it is. Good luck to all of us. Kreisler, Rachmaninoff, Liebesfreude, Love's Joys. It's 8. Should we end soon? I mean, it's getting late. So I'll play maybe a couple gospel numbers. I like to end with Southern Gospel. Oh, but here's the story about them. And I never tell it before playing that piece, because that thing it's very tricky, that piece. Nightmarish. So here's the story. Chrysler never practiced. I don't think he needed to. He liked to sit in Central Park when he was in this country and just stare at the trees and talk to people and just be his lovely self. But he didn't like to practice. And I love this phrase he said. When he'd go perform, he would say, "I don't go and perform, I just go and see my friends." And I love that. But again, he didn't practice much. So they were giving a recital, Rachmaninoff at the piano, Chrysler at the violin. They were doing some sonata or something. Chrysler messed up. He got lost. That's why I don't tell the story until after I play it. And he goes to Rachmaninoff, who's still playing, and Rachmaninoff, even when he played, was just like a stone-faced. And he whispers, "Where are we?" And Rachmaninoff, from the side of his mouth, mutters, "Carnegie Hall." Didn't help much. So I'm going to play some gospel. Here is a Mosey Lister gospel tune called "Where No One Stands Alone." to do a very upbeat, maybe slightly jazzy rendition of Leaning on the Everlasting Arms. I've done this in the following way, but today's not going to be like the, wait, how does it go? Wait. But this is a little different. Maybe after that I'll do a more country gospel type thing. So this is a little jazzy. That's weird. I didn't like it. Real quick, I'll do this very, very country gospel. I have to admit, I'm sorry, I grew up in New Jersey, but well, my mother's from Russia, my dad's a Southerner, so when we visit his family in Southeast Virginia, I picked up, I think, by ear some of this. So let's see how it goes. This is I'll Fly Away in a upbeat Southern gospel country, old school way. So. Let's do it again. guess we'll wrap up here. Stayed over a little, but thank you all very much for coming. We went from list all the way up to some gospel, so everything in between. Thank you very much. Have a great weekend and evening. Hello.
Oh, it was really good. Thank you so much. Oh, yeah, I would miss it. Thank you.
Oh, well,
When did you start playing?
oh, I was about 3 or 4. But I wasn't any good at this. Just have to keep working.
Thank you. Back in the 40s, I saw these guys who came to the Detroit Symphony Orchestra. And I know, I remember that so well.
I wish I could have heard Christ.
Oh, I know. And I didn't realize then how important it was because I was teaching. Parents grabbed me and took me, so.
What a precious.
No, I remember it.
Yeah.
Your friend has had a good work ethic,
yeah,
I did.
thank you.
We enjoyed it. Good job.
It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful concert. You know what? I meant to register for this, and this is why I'm at Penny Board. I forgot to do it. And so as we were walking in the hall, I said, "Well, I'm headed tonight." I said, "Oh," I said, "Go ahead, go ahead." And I said, "Oh," and I'm so happy. It was so. Thank you so very
Oh,
much.
thank you. Thank you.
Yes, we so enjoyed it.
Give a good report to you.
Oh, yes, we are so excited.
Thank you. It's always great to be here. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, welcome. Welcome. This is a wonderful place.
Very, very
Oh,
talented.
thank you.
I thought you were going to fly away. Man, that was, I mean, you know the whole spectrum.
Thank you.
I mean, this to, what can you say? I think he can play anything he wants to. That's amazing. How do you remember all these notes? I know you've done a number of times, but still, that's a lot to remember.
Yeah, sometimes I did for many years, and now I perform full time.
Okay.
So I never had time to practice. I was at UNC Chapel Hill at UC
Oh.
for a number of years. Now I do this.
Students are very grateful to be
Well, yeah. Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, good. Oh, good, of course.
Oh,
Thank you for coming.
good. Did you have siblings?
Yeah, my brother, yeah.
One brother?
Yeah.
Don and I both, this is my husband, Don, and I'm Carol.
Hi.
Both of us grew up with 7 siblings, and now we're the only ones left.
There's a lot of
Enjoy.
siblings.
Now, are you married? Do you have children?
Yeah, I'm married. We have 2 kids, ages 2 and 4.
Oh my God.
Boys. 2 boys.
2 and 4? Are you crazy?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. No wonder
I
his
don't
fingers
sleep very
hurt.
much.
I'm sure you
just,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, they're up and down.
Well, it's better than when they were just born.
Yeah, of course.
That was.
Good luck to you. Where do you
Okay.
live?
I live in Mebane.
My daughter and her husband live in
Oh.
Memphis. You know the name of the street? I can never forget it. It's a little cul-de-sac. Yeah.
Wow. Good town.
I'll
It's
be
growing.
very brief. I have a daughter who entered, her son entered Chapel Hill as a junior at 17.
Wow. That's really
Then they have 2 adopted children that are twins. They adopted, they're now 12, they adopted them right out of the hospital. And 2 foster children. But they're not crazy.
No, that's just a good part. That's.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
And they've had the foster children for 2 years, and now they're guardians. The father has left the country and has gone to Vietnam, and the mother has polio. So.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
But they're the guardians. So they're like the parents.
Wow.
And they live in a house this big.
Wow.
If you have any extra money, I can give it to
Oh,
you. They need
Well.
it. The diamond you found.
Yeah, well, there's that, that diamond.
I don't know who that is.
I was anxious, but did your wife teach also?
She did. We were both she was also at Carolina, and she was also at East Carolina.
Okay.
And we made this decision. Actually, let me turn this off, and because I don't want to.
Oh, sure.